So this is a video about ranked choice voting at GCC. I joined the Student Senate this term, and I had an idea, actually right before I decided to run, that it would be really cool if we could transition the voting at the college to ranked choice voting, and I thought it was a great time because we have ranked choice voting on the ballot in Massachusetts this year. And that's actually going to be voted on tomorrow. Tomorrow is Election Day 2020. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how that goes. To put it lightly. So, first past the post voting is the voting system we have at GCC now. It's the voting system we have in the vast majority of the country, really everywhere except Maine right now, with a few kind of individual cities and towns and other variations, but pretty much, using different kinds of voting, but pretty much we all use first past the post voting. And it's the simplest kind of election to have for sure. There's literally two rules. It's really straightforward. Each voter gets a vote, and the candidate with the most votes wins. And while this might seem like a great system, it's literally the simplest thing possible. It's very straightforward and seems to be fair. It's actually not. It's a really terrible system. So let's say we've got some election results. Here are some sample results. Let's just say we have a political spectrum. So let's say the candidates kind of closer in color to each other on this side are more similar ideologically. And they each won a small percentage of the overall vote. The most anyone got was 20%. So this 20% candidate right here, 80% of voters did not vote for the 20% candidate. 80% of the voters don't like that candidate necessarily, but they still won. So that's a problem, huge problem right off the bat. Second problem is that voters aren't stupid, and they're going to think, hey, I just voted for, let's say, the red candidate, and got 9%, and this candidate I didn't really like won. If I vote next time for maybe the yellow candidate who is closer to what I believe, maybe they'll win. And maybe I'll get my way because they were only 1 percentage point below the candidate that won in this election. And so next election they'll go to the yellow. And so over the course of the next few elections, what we're going to see is voters thinking strategically. And so we end up with a two-party system, which has all of its own problems with division and just us versus them, instead of a diverse spectrum of different ideas, which is what we really have. And so the biggest problem, really, with first past the post voting is the spoiler effect. And so once we already have a two-party system, and by a party system, I don't mean like Democrats and Republicans or like formal official parties. I just mean any election where there are only two choices, right? That's a two-party system. Let's say we have a two-party system, and then a third candidate comes along, and the better that third party does, the more it's going to hurt its own voters by guaranteeing a loss for the candidate they most agree with and a win for the candidate they most disagree with. So we really need a new system that doesn't have these pretty concerning problems that actually lead to a choice between the lesser of two evils, or feeling that you're unable to vote for who you really want. You have bad choice number one and bad choice number two. And so ranked choice voting is a potential solution. There's other ideas too, but this is, I think, a great one. And the rules of ranked choice voting are also pretty simple. There's 3 rules, really, is the way I like to think about it. Each voter ranks the candidates in order of preference. So there's no voting, there's just ranking, and that is your vote. You don't vote for a candidate by putting at the top, you're just ranking them as your first choice. And you rank the candidates you don't like by putting them at the bottom if you want. You don't have to include them. If you don't include a candidate, it gets assumed that it's at the bottom. Then these lists, all the lists from all the different voters with all these rankings of candidates, they're combined into one kind of average list, and then the candidates at the top of this list win. So this is a variation of something called the Condorcet method, which is mathematically proven to be the best possible system to get the most representation, the most accurate representation. And yeah, that's the way I like to think about it. It chooses the most representative candidate as the winner. Whichever candidate most represents everyone's values, everyone's views, and not just significantly large sector. And it takes into account not just people's top choices, not just the one person they like the most, but more information about how the electorate feels. And so here I want to show you a campaign ad from Maine where they instituted ranked choice voting a little bit ago, because I think it's a great example of the way ranked choice voting really changes the mood of politics. Yeah, you'll see for yourself the way these candidates talk about the race is something we would never see in a system like first past the post.
Hello, I'm Mark Eaves.
And I'm Betsy Sweet. And in this upcoming governor's race, we are competitors, but we have been longtime allies.
The good thing is, and the lucky part is, we have ranked choice voting. So you get to vote for all 7 Democratic candidates.
And we believe that the only way the Democrats are going to win in November is if we elect a strong progressive. And you've got 2 of us right here.
That's right. And just today, the Working Families Party endorsed both of us, which we're really proud of.
Yeah, and we also both have the certification of Moms Demand Action for Gun Safety. So it's not just us that think we're progressive. You know us from our work, but there's a lot of other people who recognize it too. And this is our time.
So on June 12th, you can vote for me first and Betsy second,
or me first and him second. And you can be assured that we will have a strong progressive leader and we will all move Maine forward together.
That's right. We got to turn it around. Make sure you vote on June 12th.
Don't forget.
Here's the actual text of the amendment I'm proposing. We start with an introduction, which basically just says, this is our election system for the student senate, and a few important things. Races for non-equivalent seats, the president, vice president, student senate, are going to be separate, so we'll have separate elections for that. This is not a change. This is how we already do that at GCC. And it says that we don't need to worry about parts 8 and 9 for races in which there's only one opening or seat, because they deal with how to fill more than one seat. So then we have order of preference ballots. And this is just talking about how you can vote with order of preference ballot, ranked choice, and saying that it's acceptable to indicate ties or to not indicate candidates. There's really no way to go wrong if you're a voter in this system. You just fill out your thing however you want, whatever way makes sense to you. It's a very free form. Then we've got write-in candidates, and again, that is pretty straightforward. you can write in a candidate and rank that candidate however you'd like at whatever preference level. And then we have another interesting part, and this is really relevant, I think, interpretation of preference marks. So this is just saying how we're going to count your ballot when we look at it. And if a voter puts one candidate at level 3 and skips level 4 and then puts another candidate at level 5, that's totally valid. It just won't express more of a dislike for the voter 5. Like if you have 3 candidates and 10 choices, you're not going to put, candidates 1 and 2 at the top and then candidate 3 at the 10th. If you do that, there's no problem, but it's going to be as if you put them all at the top, and just in the same order. So then we've got a tally table, and so this is where we really get into how we find the winner. And so the way this works is every possible combination of 2 candidates is compared, and we get a number for how many voters like the first candidate over the second candidate, how many voters don't care which candidate, between these 2 candidates, they don't have a preference, and how many candidates like the first, like the second candidate over the first candidate. And for these 2 candidates, all these 3 numbers will add to the overall number of voters, is just what that last sentence means. Then we've got popularity ranking. And so the next step here is to take every possible order of candidates. And this step is really important for Condorcet voting, the Condorcet method. Even if we're only holding an election for 1 seat, we're still going to look at every possible order of all the candidates. And each possible order, each sequence, will get a score based on how well they match with what we found in the tally table. And so in an ideal situation, in the popularity ranking, that we settle on, every candidate who's higher than another candidate will have a better score in the tally table than that candidate. It is possible that we'll have a situation where that is not, that there is no ranking that works that way, and that's when we don't have a Condorcet winner, but it will always select that candidate when it exists, a candidate who beats every other candidate in the tally table, and when it doesn't, it'll select the candidate who comes closest to that. And then, so at the top of our sequence is the first most representative candidate, and if there's just 1 seat, for the president or whatever, then that, at the top of the list, that's the candidate that wins. If we have more seats, we got some more stuff going on here. In section 8, it talks about how to weight down the ballots that in which voters were preferring the candidate that already won, because they already got representation. And so now the minority might have a little bit of a better chance at winning this next seat. And then for part 9, it's just then we'll keep doing the same thing kind of over and over again to fill all the seats. And then I just have a little section about ties. We're going to recount, and if we're really sure it's a tie, find a random, or insert a random vote. and the advisor, the student senate, Mary, will have jurisdiction over that. And so, yeah, I'm excited about the system. I think it's a whole lot better than what we have now, and I even think it's significantly better than what's being proposed in Massachusetts, which is, and what they had in Maine, which is called instant runoff voting. Now that you've heard my arguments for ranked choice voting and seen exactly what I'm proposing, you might be thinking, I get why this is a great idea for the country and politics, where there's all this division and so many issues, but why do we need it at GCC? We're just a small community college where everyone's pretty friendly, and we don't have any negative campaign ads, or don't really have much ideology, or at least not controversial ideology when it comes to the student senate races. So I think this is necessary because we want democracy at GCC, with the student senate specifically. It's a democratically elected body, and it's supposed to provide the, in my view, very essential purpose of giving students real power and a real voice in what happens at GCC. And we have, through the student senate, more say in certain areas than we would otherwise. And so in order to choose who's going to be on the student senate, we want to choose the voters who are most representative of the students. It's kind of a matter of principle, whether or not it's actually necessary, and it's going to have practical ramifications right now. It doesn't make any sense to choose a body of representatives with a method that is inherently flawed. The Condorcet method is just a better method, and it's a common sense improvement. And just a note, I totally butchered the French in this video. I called Condorcet voting Condorcet voting. So yeah, it is pronounced Condorcet. But I said Condorcet.